We all know that we should talk to our family and friends about our wishes and preferences for end of life and funeral preferences, ways we want to be taken care of, and what happens after we're gone. But maybe you've experienced what we have and what we've heard people talking about is that so often people sort of just are afraid of this. It's got a stigma around it. They're afraid if you talk about death, you're going to die or something like that. People will change the subject maybe. They'll make a joke. Sometimes they say, why are we even talking about this? And nobody's dying right now. And I don't think it's because people don't care. It's that no one really taught us how to do this. And maybe it feels like it's morbid or it's uncomfortable, or you're ruining your time together. Like some of us don't get invited to dinner parties
To
anymore,
dinners
right?
anymore. That's
Right,
right, that's
right.
right.
Yeah,
And, it's awkwardness and discomfort because it's always gonna show up and surprise us,
yeah,
unless we talk about it. And so, people we have seen the role models around us when nobody talks about death until somebody's actually died or dying, and it's right after in the work, the heavy lifting of trying to take care of the the crisis that just occurred comes up.
yeah,
And, it is very heavy and it feels very frightening for folks. But we're here to offer you a different path. You have the ability to approach this whole like life event very differently. You
yeah,
can do it casually, early, and with intention. And it stops being the big crisis, the big
yeah.
death talk at the end of life. It's just another important conversation that you can have, just as though you were like talking to your kids about what they're going to do with their future,
Mm-hmm.
or how are you going to save for your house, or
Yeah,
what kind of car would you like. It's planning.
yeah.
It's talking about all the pieces that
Right.
are really important to plan for.
Yeah, it's just it doesn't come easily necessarily. It can take courage actually. But in this episode, we're going to cover three specific things. We're going to talk about how to start these conversations, naturally, and we'll have some prompts that we can offer you, some moments that make it easy. What to say when people kind of shut down, when people back off, and how to handle resistance when that comes up. Right, that does come up, and if it gets hard, but not by pushing, but with compassion, and kindness. And then, how to keep it coming going over time because it's important. It's not just one and done with this, right? And that's what helps, like, our main goal in our podcast is to normalize, destigmatize this. And what does that is by having this become a regular conversation. So one talk isn't enough, make sure that this is
Mhm.
something that becomes a part of your ongoing conversation.
That's right. So at the end of this episode, you're going to have some simple and, I mean, they're tested. People have said about these approaches can really help take the weight off of these conversations. And maybe it's after listening to it, you will think of ways to open up conversations with your friends and family, and you can begin this planning for the end of life. Because at the very end of this, people really matter. Your loved ones matter, and you love them enough to take care of all these little details. And you just need to open up the avenue for them to be able to be comfortable having this conversation.
Yeah, and you might figure out that they might figure out that they actually are thankful for this, right? They might come to you and go, "Wow,
Mhm.
thanks for doing that." And your friends, I've had that happen. Some of my friends and now my family too are like, "Wow, I'm so glad that this has become more of a normal thing
Mhm.
and I don't have to feel so worried about it," right?
Mhm.
Um, we want to just make a note that we are changing things up. Starting this week, we're
Mhm.
going to be posting a new feature at the beginning of each week. Last Monday, we created our very first current affairs version of In Conversation with our excellent and wise editor, Sam
Yay,
Zemke.
Sam.
Yeah. And we hope to publish a new episode on current events about loss and grief and dying every week. So our regular episodes will continue, of course, but we're going to start posting those on the weekends, on Saturday probably. So we want to welcome you to this episode of End of Life Conversations. Hello, everyone. I am the Reverend Wakil David Matthews, and we have this wonderful show or conversation we'd wanted to share with you folks, with Ana Luisa and I today, thinking about how you can open up the dialogue with people, your friends, your family, anybody. I mean, when we go out, we talk about these things all the time. So it's like
It
the
it naturally comes up.
yeah, that's kind of the way it is with us. But I think we've heard from people that it's a hard thing to start talking about. Some people don't wanna talk about it, right? And so we
Mhm.
thought we'd give you some tips and tools about the ways we would do that and what some maybe some ideas that would help, so
That's right. Well, and I'm the Reverend Mother Ana Luisa Mendades. And first of all, it is really easy for me to talk about death and dying because I've been doing it a lot. And if it's not comfortable for you, the listener, it's okay.
yeah.
Like it's a hard thing unless you're doing it a lot. So just sit back and think about all these little clever tricks we're going to help you with to broach the subject.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that comes up a lot is just, when I'm talking to people about this is just baby steps,
Mhm.
what are some tools you can use to just kinda open up the dialogue without confronting somebody, without walking in and saying, "Tell me about death," or "Talk to me about your own
Mhm.
death," or something, because that can be
Mhm.
overwhelming to some people, or some people just don't wanna talk about it. But
Mhm.
it's an important subject, and we all are gonna go there, and so being able to help people think about it and normalize that conversation as has been our mission, but
Yes.
also to think about what they want, what they want to have
Right.
happen. It's important.
Right. Well, and I was just thinking, I think it's really uncomfortable discussing this topic with family or loved ones, because if you're talking to elder family members and or younger siblings who are potentially going to die sooner than you, I remember that discomfort of like I have to talk about this, but oof, like I don't want her to feel bad, and uh, it is a lot different of a conversation than you have with somebody on an airplane as you're flying to Asia, and
Right.
you end up something triggers this conversation, and suddenly you find yourself, like, really immersed and able to discuss this because it's a complete stranger, you'll never see them again,
Right.
and it matters because it's good practice that you've done this,
Yeah.
and it matters because hopefully you'll find ways to have this very important conversation with those that are really important to you. And I would start out by saying, like, ask a question.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a simple question. And
What yeah,
often it's the kind of question is just like ask them for a story. People love to tell stories,
that's
you
right.
know. So ask them for a story about a time they've dealt with loss,
Uh-huh.
and how that looked for them and how it felt for them. That's kind of an opening. That's one little tool that I've found is
Mhm.
helpful. What are some other ones that you've used that have helped, especially with people who are like you've talked about running into people who are like, no, not going to go there. Um,
Yeah, and, I don't press that with folks who don't wanna
yeah,
talk about it if they're not essential to my day-to-day, right? Like,
right.
a random stranger who's like, "Ooh, I don't" that's
Yeah, yeah,
gross, it's weird. But I think, asking a question of what their experiences with loss can be, and sometimes I will get somebody to say, "Oh, I really wanna talk about this with my parents," but they never wanna talk about it.
yeah, yeah.
And lo and behold, I get asked over for a something. And I will in the conversation, just like, "Oh, how long have you lived here? I bet you've seen a lot of changes.
Right?
Do you what, tell me about this neighborhood or this job that you've had or, you know, what has happened to people? Where have they gone?" And it will always show up like, "Oh, yeah, our neighbors across the street had to move because somebody passed away," or, "We've got a bunch of cats buried in the backyard."
Yeah,
Like, death is a line that it's everywhere.
yeah,
And at that moment, then you could be like, "Oh, well, tell me about
yeah. How did that feel?
this cat cemetery. Would you like to be buried here?"
Right. In the cat
And then
cemetery?
then it also kind of gives it that lightness, right? You just
Yeah,
laughed. Like, giving a little bit of, humor to this is
yeah,
always,
yeah.
eases this road for so many people.
Yeah, and you really are providing service, really, this is something to think about, that the most important thing we're here to do is to provide service to our community and to our
Mhm,
beloveds, and this is a service that you can think of
mhm,
it that way, and that might help you feel a little less, hesitant because you think, "Okay, I can help somebody this way. This is something I can do to help this person um, become more comfortable with this conversation and become more comfortable and prepare better for the things that are going to come
Mhm.
up. So for either their own loss or and their losses, there's so many different ways we have losses,
That's
but
right.
also their to spread the word to open the conversation more. So yeah, so
Mhm.
it's a really important thing to do. We of course obviously we are very much about this, but yeah, what other kind of things can you think about that have helped?
Well, let's just hit the movies, right? Like, movies
Yeah.
often have this theme of dying of a loved one in a myriad of ways, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What was that movie of, like, the woman who really wanted to meet her ghost, and the ghost really did everything to try to come into the world, and then she ended up in a car accident. Do you remember that movie from, like, the '90s?
Yeah, yeah. There's a bunch of yeah. You're right.
Um,
There's a lot of those kind of movies, right? Yeah, and that's it's a great way to start the conversation. Like, "Have you seen this movie?" And get them to tell you which one it is. Maybe they'll know. You
yeah,
know, they'll remember
I should
maybe.
look.
Um,
But, anything that's out in the grand scheme of life will probably be an opening for a
yeah.
very beautiful conversation about, "Hey, would you ever come back? Would you wanna be a ghost for somebody?" Like,
Right.
these are all playful ways for people to start thinking about dying. Like, what
Yeah.
does it mean when you don't get to be here? And, recently we discussed, like, my new thing is, like, asking people, "If you could be a ghost, what are you gonna do to make sure people know it's you?
Yeah, right, right.
Have you told people?"
Yeah, right. What should they expect? Yeah, and we've heard from our podcast, we've heard people talk about the conversations or the communications that they've had,
That's right.
after someone goes and that, they knew
Mhm,
that that was the person and even people who are pretty cynical about these things have in the end or, often said, "Well, actually, yeah, I kinda think I did hear
mhm,
something from them."
mhm,
That one
mhm.
I remember the one person's, husband who came downstairs said, "Dang it, now they're talking to me."
Yeah, I remember that,
'Cause
that's
he was
funny,
like a
yes.
scientist and, and he's like, "This is not real," but then, "Oh,
Yeah,
well, maybe it is." And it
maybe
really,
this
I think part of that is that it doesn't matter if it's real or not, it's like it's something that we feel, it's an emotional connection, it's a psychological
Mhm,
connection, and if it feels like a connection, then it's a connection, what do we know?
right,
We have very, very limited senses, and we have
right,
our own stories that we learn to believe in, and there's a lot more outside of that than a lot more a bunch more outside of that
mm,
perceptive circle or window than there is in it, so, right.
right.
Yeah.
So giving lots of space to these silly little stories are really also a great way to find out what people are feeling about, maybe they're fearful of ghosts. And that's, that kind of catapults them into, oh, I don't even want to die, well, and then that's a very different conversation as well. Like,
Yeah.
what are you afraid of?
Yeah.
Like, have you told your family about this fear?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
holding curiosity with all these trajectories of
Yeah.
dying.
Yeah. It's a lot about that. Yeah, it's a lot of curiosity is a great word for it. It's really important about just paying
Mhm.
attention, being curious, listening, a lot of listening, but also listening for clues. So if somebody, depending on their reaction or the way they respond or the story they tell, you can maybe get some clues about what else you might talk about with them, like their fears around dying or their fears about being in
Mhm.
pain or
Mhm.
whatever. You can start to kind of look for clues. And then the questions are always important. Like, what kind of questions can you use? These are good tools too. What kind of questions can you
Mhm.
use to say, do you want to talk about this? First of all, and
Mhm.
if they, for instance, said, "I'm just really afraid of not being able to take care of myself." Well,
Mhm.
tell me more about that. What would that look
Mhm.
like for you,
Mhm.
and what would you want people to know about how to take care of you in that case? And so yeah, there's an opening right there. So uh,
Mhm.
yeah,
And, I end up speaking to people 50s or 60s or even 70s who are, trying to get their 80s, 90s, almost 100-year-old parents to make the choice of
yeah,
what do you want to do?
yeah,
And, so if that's you and you're at this moment and they're starting to talk about, I'm really afraid of, you know, leaving you here with my mess, or I'm
Mm,
afraid that, you'll find me and I'll be like soaked in urine, or, or nobody will find me for a few days. So that is the most loving opening for you to
mhm.
say, well, I need to write this down so that I know exactly what you want.
Yeah,
And then, you could go back and figure out, like, is it the 5 wishes that we're gonna just, like, kind of rudimentary to make?
yeah,
Or do we wanna talk about advanced care directives, and we can talk about all these little things that are contributing to this anxiety around the end of life?
yeah, yeah. It's a great chance. And keeping the conversation going, if it turns out to be a stimulating, fun conversation, then they'll wanna do it again, and you can kinda keep it
That's
going.
right.
So that's
That's
part of
right.
it, keep it happy or not necessarily happy, but keep it light,
Keep it light. Mhm.
and not, no pressure. That's a big part. Don't go in with an objective or go in with something that you're gonna fix things for them, you're gonna help.
Right.
You wanna be helpful, you wanna be of service, but you wanna be of service in a gentle, compassionate, thoughtful way that doesn't overwhelm them or make them feel like they're being pressured. Because as soon as that happens, a lot of people will just back away, and that'll be the end of the conversation, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
Well, and as you say this too, I think that, especially if you're in that, age range where you're trying to get your elder parents to discuss this topic,
yeah,
it is never too soon to make your own advanced care directive plan.
right?
So sharing like, "Hey, like, I did the 5 wishes with a couple of friends, and I'd like you to know this too." Even though
Yeah,
they're older people and statistically your elder parents will not outlive you, but
mhm,
sometimes they do. And it's still important that everybody in the family know the story of what you find important and of value for your life at the end of the days, right? So,
yeah, yeah,
so mom and dad, oh, like, you're having this anxiety about not being able to care for yourself. Listen, I worry too. Like, I don't even know what it's going to look like or how long I'm going to live, assuming I'll live a long life. But I've already decided that, if at this time, if something were to happen, this is what I want to set up in place.
yeah,
I would like to have this kind of assistance. And do you want to see what you would like to do, or who
yeah,
you would like to have help you?
yeah,
I would love for you to, just hear all of my folks who will be helping out. Don't make it about like, you should do this. It's like, this is what we could do together.
yeah, that's a great way to do it. Yeah, just having that, camaraderie, and sharing because you're sharing your own story.
Hmm.
That's another way to hear people's stories. Like, "This is my story, tell me your story."
Hmm.
And that's something we can always do more of, but especially around this subject.
Right.
It's a great way to get this done.
And
Yeah.
also be ready to rein back any judgments or
Yeah.
deep emotional feelings you may have. I remember in my 20s, I was talking to my family about I wanted to be cremated,
Mm.
and my parents are very not cremation kind of people. And I mean, as a 20-year-old, this is what you'd expect a 20-year-old to do anyhow. But they were mad. They were like, you can't do that. That's not your, that won't be your choice. They were flexing their age, I guess. But, at that moment, I never spoke to them about these things again, right?
Mm.
Because it was disparaging. It made me feel like I was doing something wrong for wanting to be cremated rather than being buried.
Yeah.
And so if you're in a situation when, your parent says, uh, I want to die and I want to be immediately cremated and I don't want you to tell anybody else anything, you listen, you like metabolize it with your stories about them, and you're like, okay, like if that is a value for you,
Yeah.
let's write this down, because at the end of the day, it's about them.
Yeah. Yep.
It's
It
about
is.
each of our desires.
Yeah. And there's a balance. We also have heard from people saying, you know, we want to, it's important for people to have agency over what happens at the end of their life and be able to tell people what they want and hopefully have people that will honor what they've asked for. But then some one guy the other day
Mhm.
said, "But I'm not gonna be here, so I really don't care. Do whatever you
Right,
want."
right.
And in the end, it really is about the people who are left behind. So that's another really good reason to have this conversation because the more they can understand and more they can be on board with you, for what you want to have happen, the more you can be on board with what they want to have happen,
Mhm.
the less likely there's going to be conflicts or issues that are going to
Mhm,
come up
mhm,
between
mhm.
disagreeing people. And in the end, it's true, you won't be there, and so, um, but
You won't be there.
and you've got, well, yeah, I mean, you won't be in a place you can make the decision, so the decision will be made by hopefully people you trust and hopefully in the way you
Mhm.
want them to be. Um, so yeah, that's important to, as you said, I think that's really good thing to note, that just withhold judgment. Don't try to convince somebody
Right,
that they should do something
right.
because you think it's the right thing. Uh, so
That's right. Well, and in the same vein, I've shared this before in our podcast how, my kids had a moment when they were trying to figure out how to take care of our family cat's body after he died. And one child was against burial, the other child was against cremation. And it occurred to me at that moment that I had always told the kids, like, when I die, you two just decide what you want to do. I
yeah,
really have no preference.
yeah,
But I realize, like, it's a disservice to allow them to have to make that choice in this acute moment of grief.
yeah,
And I would rather just take care of it and think about it, decide, and that way there's no strife. You're not
right,
making this a situation where there'll be more strife. So again, like if you're talking to your elderly parent and their siblings, it is a really good idea to find out what do they want and do my siblings know? Can we
yeah,
write this down?
yeah,
Can you record this? Can I videotape this? Whatever. But just so that all of us can really know that these are your true words.
yeah, and also be there in conversation about, is this something you can be a part of? You know, some people may say, I really don't. I have so much problem with that. I can't have anything to do with that. And you could,
Mhm.
and then they can maybe say, well, maybe you opt out of
Mhm.
participation in this because this is their wish, and and I want to honor their wish. So, but
Mhm.
again, it's just having the conversations ahead of time is the important part.
That's
And so,
right.
getting these conversations going in whatever way you can are just a great thing to do, because it's still going to be fraught. It's still going to be hard because people are going to be in grief. There's going to be a lot of emotions, and
Mhm.
but the more you've had time to, like, get the muscle memory, if you will, of,
Mhm.
of what know, what you have talked about, what you plan to do, what you expect to do, what you expect to have happen, the easier it's going to be for everybody at that when it does happen. So
That's right. That's
yeah,
right. So the other way that we have talked about opening up the conversation is you pick up a book and you start reading it. And once you're done reading it, you can just say, "Hey, I just read this really cool book. Have you thought about the end of life?"
right.
I pulled out two books that make me just giddy with, like, I'm so excited to die. Um, 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals. I love this not because it's like a end of life kind of piece, but, um, we are finite creatures,
Yeah.
and, to live a good life is also to plan for a good death. So, I feel like, that's a great, opening to a conversation you might wanna have with people who are living as though they're never gonna die, but, they will. I
Yes,
promise.
yes, indeed. It is going to happen.
Um, and
Yeah.
then the other book I have is Advice for Future Corpses.
Oh, yeah, I love that. That's
Uh,
what a great
practical
title.
a practical perspective on death and dying. And what I really adore about this book, which I have all these notes in here that I should probably go back and read, but the New York Times said, in its loving, fierce specificity, this book on how to die is also a blessed, saccharine-free guide for how to live. And I think that, everybody fears speaking about the reaper, but it really will make your life richer,
Yeah.
and you'll get to really enjoy it more knowing that it'll be over at some point.
At some point, it's definitely gonna be over, right? Yeah, and books in general, we had a wonderful, podcast episode with
Right.
Andrea Warblin Reed. Yeah,
There it is.
there's her book, yeah. To see yourself As You Vanish. Incredibly beautiful book of
Yeah.
poetry, and this woman, wrote this poetry over the last years of her life, and just profound. And her husband and a good friend of hers were, on our podcast and told us,
Mhm.
we've read a bunch of poetry, most first of all, which was really excellent, and really, I think just for me, it was one of the most moving podcasts we did, just because this
Yes.
poetry was so profound and so deep and so in it,
Mhm.
into, and then we just know of another Andrea, yeah, that just made a
Andrew
movie.
Gibson?
Andrea
Yes.
Gibson, yeah, talk about that movie. You just saw it. I'm gonna see it probably tonight. So,
Oh, yeah. So the title of this is a documentary. It's Come See Me. Come See Me in the Good Light. And it's the last year or months of Andrea Gibson's life. They are the poet laureate for Colorado.
uh
And I watched it a week ago, and it really did create a lot of small conversations with people outside of the movie venue, actually. But one thing that kept coming with people is, like, to watch somebody as they're living to die really, like, uh, gave me an insight into who we are in those moments when somebody else is actually going through it, right? Like, Andrea's wife, was very hopeful the entire time, very, like, optimistic,
mhm,
and Andrea, just, talked about, like, still staying strong, still getting out and doing things, and still really checking in on her cancer and what was going on and being real about that, and, not all of us will have an experience like that, but what I really appreciated about this poet's life is that everything felt like like, this beautiful long poem, and,
mhm.
being so close to death makes you live, and she said that. They said that. It was very apparent, and I absolutely, like, I feel like crying just thinking about this movie.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and again, like the books and the movies, they give you a way to open this conversation. Like, wow, I
Mhm,
just saw this movie. You want to go, or would you like to go see the movie with me? Or
mhm.
have you seen it? What do you think of it? By the way, just to go back and just tell you, if you want to see that episode from Andrea Warble and Reed, about the book to See Yourself as You Vanish, it's episode, season 4, episode 17. So recommend that highly. Um,
Mhm.
Here's another book that, and so my wife and I help to, manage a thing called the Grievers Library, which is a one of these little mini libraries, but it's all books about grief. And this is one of the books that we just were looking at there. It's called
Final
Final
Gifts,
Gifts,
yes. Yeah.
and it's a couple of, written by a couple of hospice nurses who have worked in hospice for 20 years, and just this set of stories, just one story after another about what it was like, the gifts that people who are dying can give you and the gifts you can give back
Mhm,
just by paying
mhm.
attention and by understanding them. So again, just that kind of anything like that or anything that in your life, whether it's a book or an experience that you've had, just those are just all ways to kind of open that conversation and say,
That's right.
or like my dog, your dog, in this case, we just lost my our dog, and that's we're feeling really, we're going through all the feels around that. And
Mhm,
has this ever happened to you? So these are
mhm,
all ways that just kind of, again, looking to our own stories and asking to hear other people's stories.
mhm.
Just a good way to get the first steps, get the conversation
And have
opened
this
up.
conversation.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a one and done.
No, hopefully not.
It's
Yeah.
there's, you just kind of it's like kicking a stone down the road, like,
Yeah. Right.
just it's gonna change as it goes, and, it's gonna get smoother and easier for you to talk about this subject, and I think that people who really go into it feeling uncomfortable, the more it's broached, the easier it becomes, the less of a weight on the shoulder that they must feel.
Yeah, yeah. I think my experience has been with myself and with my beloveds that they the conversations, they did start. My son especially, I remember the very first time I mentioned this to him, he's like, "Nah, I don't really wanna talk about that," you know?
Mm.
Um, but, just over time, because we've made it a normal thing in our conversations, and as you
Mhm.
and Louisa and her family as well, um, it's just they're more comfortable about it, and they're able to make decisions and think about it and get things done toward, the planning and that kind of thing, and my friends, many of my friends, same thing, I just went for a
Mhm.
walk with my friend, and he's like, "Yeah, yeah, I need to get a little bit more of that done. Thanks for reminding me,"
Mhm,
So
mhm,
again,
mhm.
it's just having that as something, and not necessarily that every single time you see somebody, you say, "Hey, what about death and
Right.
dying?" But just that it's something that they're comfortable with, they know you're comfortable with,
Right.
and that the conversation is there and it's open.
Mhm,
So,
mhm. Yeah,
well,
and I just wanna put one last thing
yeah,
too,
yeah,
like, there's always this idea that we don't see death until we see the big deaths, right? Like, of
yeah,
the human the humans who pass, but, every day I notice dead little animals.
yeah.
We notice a dead lawn who didn't get any water. We notice, dying trees. We notice, like, there is a lot of death around us, and if you just kind of just push yourself into just giving a little deeper glance around and bearing witness to this, like, just saying,
Yeah,
"Hey, like,
yeah.
wow, I'm so sorry, little squirrel." I did see a dead squirrel this morning. I was like, "Oh my god, it's really cold because you probably just plopped off a tree." And,
Right.
and I was just like, "I'm really sorry for your passing,"
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
so
yeah.
it's a good little practice to, like, start that muscle to notice because it's just a good practice.
Yeah, I mean, we had this really wonderful another great, episode with Sam, um,
Yeah.
who talked about that a lot, all the different losses that we go through.
Mhm,
As,
mhm.
I just looked at it, season 4, episode 5, so check that out.
Right.
But yeah, I think I heard you I think you were talking about one time somebody said, "I really don't think about death at all," and you said, "Well, look at the leaves, look around, it's like winter, things are
Yeah.
dying, and that's the way it works, you know?"
Mhm.
Um, and so again, just having that awareness and creating that awareness in the people you love
Mhm.
and in your community
Mhm. Mhm.
is such a great service, such an important service. And
That's
the other
right.
beautiful part of that is that we know that the fall comes, the winter comes, and then the spring comes, right? So
Mhm.
things
Mhm.
you lose things and
Regenerate.
you gain things and things keep going. So that's
Mhm.
something to also kind of make that conversation more about hope and love
Mhm.
and lightness instead of all just, "Oh, I'm so sorry."
Mhm.
But, I
Yeah,
mean, there's sadness too. That's something to be a part of too, and not to shy away from, so,
right.
yeah, but just being open to all of that, so
Mhm.
well, I hope this has been helpful, and, we would love to hear your feedback if you have any thoughts. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are about this, so certainly send us a link or send us there's a link in this podcast to a way to send us a text. We'd love to hear from you, and hopefully you'll let us know if you have other things you'd like us to talk about, and, thanks for showing up. Thanks
Yes.
for being there.
Adios.
Adios. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to Charles Heaston, the composer of the original music you are listening to now.
And of course, thanks to you, our audience, and all of our amazing guests. Please come back next week for another great episode. Share this with your friends, family, and community. We hope you will subscribe and follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Substack. Each guest's additional information will be found in the podcast notes. And of course, if you have a good end of life story to share, please reach out. We are always eager to hear from you.
Death and dying, grief and loss, conversations about the end of life.